Welcome, chosen ones. Oscar Wilde once observed, "The truth is rarely pure and never simple." For years, you've been the quiet storm, clinging to a truth so strong that it might change everything people believed. They insulted you, ignored your intelligence, and called your foresight as fiction. But here we are, the moment they discover you were correct all along. It's an intriguing aspect of human nature. When confronted with unpleasant realities, individuals often reject them out of fear and discomfort. According to research, individuals prefer to cling to ignorance as a safety net, avoiding realities that threaten their worldview. However, as the expression goes, ignorance is not bliss. It is only borrowed time. That borrowed time has gone out. The same folks who formerly labeled you as insane are now starting to see the big picture. They're slowly discovering that you've always been 10 steps ahead. Their uneasy looks and strained grins indicate an internal struggle. Have we been the idiots all along? The answer is an emphatic yes. Witnessing people come to grips with this is its own kind of poetic justice. You've had a long journey, the misfortune of being ahead of your time. Curse of being ahead of your time. The most difficult aspect of seeing the broad vision before others does is the rejection that comes with it. People want to see what you see, but they can't. Your findings call into question the comfy illusions they've constructed their lives upon, putting their feeling of security at risk. Rather than confront the realities you provide, it is simpler for them to insult you, laugh at your views, or disregard you entirely. This rejection might seem personal, but it's not about you. It's about their fear of change, of being incorrect, and of the possibility that their whole worldview is based on a falsehood. It was difficult to stand solid in your beliefs in the face of mockery, but your perseverance and steadfast confidence sowed seeds that they could not ignore. Reality eventually caught up, and when it did, it struck them like a tsunami. They experience remorse, humiliation, and resentment. But most of all, they feel deceived by themselves. Deep down, they knew you were correct. They simply weren't prepared to confess it. Now, as they race to rewrite the story, claiming they were never against you, the reality becomes brutally clear. Their skepticism did not stop the truth. It just delayed their comprehension. The power of silent confidence. There is a certain power in being quiet when you know the truth. While others fought, discussed, and sought confirmation, you remained calm and quiet, not out of doubt, but out of conviction. You grasped something fundamental. The truth does not need to be argued. It just requires time. Your quiet assurance disturbed them. In a society obsessed with noise and continual confirmation, your quiet presence stood out. It challenged their need to be right, leaving them feeling uncertain in the face of your calm power. They couldn't figure you out, so their perplexity developed into frustration. Instead of conceding that they may be missing something, they rejected you as insignificant. But now that time has exposed the truth, they are beginning to perceive cracks in their once unwavering confidence. They criticized your quiet, yet it was truly your greatest power. Your patience, which they perceived for apathy, was merely providing them the opportunity to learn the hard way. They now despise you, not because you were incorrect, but because you did not attempt to prove them wrong. It's a harsh reality for them. While they chased plaudits and short victories, you were quietly winning the long game. And while they think about the past, they can't shake the nagging thought, What if we had listened? The knowledge they once mocked, they now want. Perhaps the most ironic twist in this trip is that the folks who previously mocked at your expertise are now asking questions. They do not return with apologies. They are much too proud for that. Instead, they approach with wary curiosity, seeking the very ideas they previously ignored. It's almost hilarious to see the transformation. Their former arrogance fades into perplexity, and their cynicism transforms into real inquiry. But their mocking was never really about you. It wasn't that your insights were faulty. It was that they couldn't believe that you, of all people, could see things they couldn't. Their incredulity was not about the truth, but about their incapacity to accept it. They are filled with remorse now that the truth has been revealed. They spent a lot of time ignoring the one guy who always had the answers. When they attempt to behave as if they've always appreciated you, it's almost funny. Their nonchalant questioning and hesitant tone imply a covert acknowledgement of guilt, even if they never say it explicitly. But you see through everything. You're not upset with them. You never wanted their approval in the first place. It's heartbreaking to see them deal with their newfound awareness. A part of you wants to say, "I told you so," but the larger half realizes it's superfluous. They already know. The burden of seeing too much. The ability to perceive the truth ahead of others is both a blessing and a curse. It's not empowering, it's alienating. When you grasp patterns, intentions, and results before they occur, you do not feel superior. It makes you feel isolated. The world around you is based on surface-level thinking and pleasant illusions. When you confront such illusions, people see you as a danger rather than as enlightened. They label you crazy, theatrical, or delusional, not because you are incorrect, but because your truth causes them to face truths they have ignored for years. Their ignorance is deliberate rather than unintentional. You eventually stopped sharing your insights. You could see how their eyes glazed over as you talked, how they sneered and rolled their eyes, seeking to maintain their false feeling of security. You understood that no matter how much you wanted to assist, you couldn't shield people from realities they weren't prepared to confront. So you bore the load on your own, pretending not to see what you saw and not to feel the weight of others' ignorance. When the time arrived, when reality struck them full force, it was not gratifying. It was not vindication. It was weariness. Being correct does not relieve the loneliness of knowing too much too soon. The game of chess. You were playing chess while others were pursuing fast victories and instant delight with checkers. You looked beyond the next step, anticipating the consequences of each choice. They derided your patience and control, mistaking these for reluctance. They mocked at your method, confident that their rash decisions would give them an advantage. But they didn't comprehend how little their immediate successes were in the broader scheme of things. The disparity between you and them become more obvious over time. While their modest successes proved ineffective, your deliberate maneuvers created unbreakable momentum. They not only played badly, but they also did not comprehend the game's rules. And now they're trapped, unable to flee, a checkmate of their own design. The beauty of it all is that you didn't have to hurry or demonstrate anything. While others spent their energy rushing, you remained calm and confident in your long-term plan. Now that they've realized the reality, they understand they weren't simply playing the incorrect game. They were up against someone who was constantly 5 steps ahead. Final thoughts. The path of the chosen ones is not simple. Being ahead of your time might seem like a disadvantage, but it is also your greatest strength. The truth does not need to be defended. It only requires time. And when time discloses everything, the world will ultimately catch up. Stay strong, be confident, and believe in the power of your calm knowledge. The truth is unstoppable, as are you. The truth, they say, is seldom pure or straightforward. Those who perceive it early on often face the weight of foresight, while others reject them as outliers, visionaries, or even idiots. For years, you were the silent storm, clinging to a truth so strong that it had the ability to change everything. Nevertheless, your lucidity was received with derision, uncertainty, and disdain. They insulted your insights, dismissing them as fantasies, and clung to their comfort zones. Now that reality has caught up with your warnings, they are forced to admit that you were always one step ahead. Humans, by definition, oppose uncomfortable facts. According to research, individuals often reject painful facts, choosing ignorance to the discomfort of change. But, as you've always known, ignorance isn't bliss. It's only a temporary state. The same individuals who questioned you are now putting together the riddle, their prior confidence eroding like a badly written mystery. Their expressions reflect an unspoken question. Were we the idiots all along? The answer, of course, is yes. But you're not looking for revenge. You've already moved on. The quiet strength of knowing. The most difficult aspect of being ahead of your time is not tolerating their laughing. It is understanding that their rejection is a reflection of their fear rather than your truth. People are resistant to anything that threatens their worldviews. They sneer not because they don't believe your point of view is genuine, but because they are unable to absorb what it entails for their current reality. It is simpler for them to scorn or discard than to face their own delusions. Your quietness was never a sign of weakness, but of peaceful assurance. While others pleaded to show their expertise, you saw that the truth does not need continual defense. It just requires time. This tacit confidence disturbed them more than words could. Your inability to participate in their cacophony bewildered them, as they couldn't connect their turmoil with your quiet. However, once the truth emerges, people see your quiet for what it was: strength. When the mocked become the saudier, the irony is almost poetry. The same individuals who derided your expertise now seek it out, not with apologies, but with timid inquiries. Their arrogance has given way to inquiry, and their tone contains an unsaid acknowledgement of guilt. They previously discarded you not because your insights were incorrect, but because their pride refused to acknowledge that you saw clearly while they wandered about in the dark. They approach you now like the past never occurred and seeking advice from someone they used to mock. You can see through their efforts to alter history and their nonchalant queries, which are filled with uncertainty. You have no resentment against them since you never wanted their approval. Watching them try to make sense of what you've always known is both rewarding and heartbreaking. Their skepticism was not your failure. It was their opportunity to grow. The burden of seeing too much. Foresight is sometimes idealized as a gift, but in reality, it is a hefty responsibility. Seeing patterns, motivations, and results before others is alienating, not empowered. You cautioned them and attempted to advise them, but they disregarded you as unduly cautious or gloomy. As a result, you were left watching helplessly as they made needless blunders. It wasn't only their ignorance that hurt, it was the emotional cost of knowing what could have been. You lamented missed chances, squandered time, and delayed lessons long before they knew what was at risk. Their denial was not a rejection of your truth, but a failure to confront their own fear. And now that reality has struck them, you don't feel satisfied. Instead, you feel exhausted from carrying this weight alone. Chess in the world of checkers. While others were pursuing fast victories, you were planning many steps ahead. Life to them was a game of checkers, in which rash judgments and short-term benefits seemed to be sufficient. But you played chess, anticipating their movements and devising a plan to outlast their showy, impulsive actions. They insulted your patience, mistaking it for reluctance. They saw your methodical activities as excessive caution, not comprehending you were developing a long-term vision. As the repercussions of their rash actions become apparent, they find themselves stuck. The distinction between you was straightforward. They played for the moment, while you played for the result. The ego was always the enemy. The truth you brought was not the problem. It was where it came from. Their rejection was not based on the truth of your ideas, but on their refusal to accept that you were correct. Recognizing it would imply recognizing their mistakes, which their pride would not allow. Their ego shielded them from the knowledge you imparted, not because they didn't grasp it, but because adopting it would destroy their self-esteem. The humiliation burns much more now that they are confronted with the obvious reality. They are not only dealing with being incorrect, but also with being wrong about you. Their arrogance, which they formerly saw as a strength, has now been shown as their biggest vulnerability. And while others struggle with their sorrow, you stay calm, unaffected by their late awareness. Your honesty never wavered, and you never sought their approval. The illusion of superiority. For years, they exuded superiority and mistook your humility for weakness. They saw their loud assurance as evidence of their value, whilst your quiet power remained undetected. They compared themselves to you, believing they were always one step ahead. But now, the illusion has broken, and they see that their supremacy was a mirage, a creation of insecurity and hubris. What they didn't realize was that you were never competing with them. While they raced in circles, seeking flimsy victories, you were constructing something substantial. The knowledge hurts not because they lost, but because they undervalued you. Their hubris blinded them to what was right in front of them, and now they must face the repercussions of their misguided pride. The cost of vindication. When they eventually concede you were correct, it feels strangely satisfying. The affirmation you've been waiting for has come, but it seems empty. Vindication does not remove the solitude you felt when they discarded you. It doesn't take away the anguish of witnessing them make errors you attempted to help them avoid. Their regret isn't your victory. It's a bittersweet reflection of what may have been. You do not celebrate, since the cost of their waking was too expensive. The missed chances, wasted time, and delayed learning were unnecessary. Their apologies are heartfelt, but they are too late to undo the past. The fact is that their faults were never about you. They were talking about their hesitation to confront what you represented. The source of their fear. Their hostility to your truth was never based on ignorance. It was about terror. You were a mirror, reflecting everything they did not want to face about themselves. Your insights questioned their worldview, comfort, and illusions. Accepting your reality would have meant destroying the delicate stability they had built their lives on. Their rejection was not about you, it was about self-preservation. They refused not because they didn't understand, but because they were unable to face the implications of knowledge, and so they discarded you, preferring denial to change. However, they were merely delaying the inevitable. The hidden cost of truth. The information you carried was more than simply knowledge, it was also a sacrifice. You carried the burden of knowing what others couldn't or wouldn't notice. While they lived in blissful ignorance, you bore the emotional cost of awareness. The humiliation, solitude, and frustration were not easy. They dismissed your caution as unwarranted, not comprehending it was the cost of seeing too much too fast. Now, when reality catches up with your warnings, they rush to make sense of everything. But you've already borne the weight of their waking. Their sorrow, anguish, and loss were palpable long before they expressed it. And as others begin to consider the consequences of their decisions, you walk onward, bearing the wounds of a reality they will never completely comprehend. In the end, their denial did not prevent the truth from being revealed. Rather, it just delayed their enlightenment. And while others deal with the repercussions, you stand steady, knowing that your strength was never in being right, but in suffering the loneliness of being ahead of your time. The knowledge that they neglected the truth hurts, not just because they were incorrect, but also because they misjudged you. They believed your prudence was excessive, not realizing that you were developing a plan well above their capabilities. Now, while they tried to make sense of the pieces left behind by their rashness, you've already won a game they never completely understood. The painful burden of foresight. Foresight is sometimes portrayed as a gift, but in truth, it is a great weight. Seeing what's coming before everyone else does is alienating, not empowered. While others go blissfully uninformed, you bear the burden of knowing what may be prevented. You attempt to warn them, but they reject you as too cautious, dramatic, or even gloomy. Nonetheless, when circumstances develop, they reinforce what you already understood. The repercussions of their ignorance are shared. They may incur losses, but you face the frustration of seeing avoidable blunders occur. Every squandered chance is like observing a fire that might have been smothered if they had trusted you to act. However, no one thought you were holding the hose. The reality is that foresight does not provide success or happiness. Rather, it brings wounds. Emotional scars occur when you endure the burden of facts that no one else is willing to confront. It's lonely to stand in a throng of people who won't recognize your wisdom until it's too late, and when reality finally strikes them, it's a bittersweet experience. While they are just now starting to feel remorse for what they have lost, you have been grieving those losses since before they grasped the implications. The ego that blinded them. The issue was never your truth, it was who told it. Their ego could not take the fact that you were correct. Admitting you were right would mean admitting they were wrong, something they couldn't bear. So they discarded you. Not because your viewpoint was invalid, but because their hubris required it. Accepting your insight seemed like defeat, an admission of your supremacy in areas they refused to admit. They opted to reject your advice because their pride couldn't bear the thought of being proved incorrect by someone they undervalued. Their hubris blinded them, preparing them for a failure they refused to acknowledge. Now, when reality develops and the truth you revealed becomes clear, they are left to deal with the pain of shame. It's not just about being incorrect. It's about admitting they were mistaken about you. Their ego, which they believed was a protection, proved to be their biggest downfall. And there you are, steadfast as ever, untouched by their need for recognition. That, too, becomes an unpleasant pill for them to take. The breaking of their illusions. For a long time, they had a false feeling of superiority. They misinterpreted your patience for inactivity and your humility for a lack of drive. Their outspoken confidence and need to demonstrate their so-called accomplishments contributed to a sense of power and authority. But now that illusion has broken. What they mistook for power and control was really insecurity and hubris. While others squandered energy attempting to impress themselves, you quietly worked on something worthwhile. You were never competing with them since you didn't play the same game. Now, when the veneer crumbles, they realize the truth. They weren't ahead of you, they were running in circles. The toughest thing for them was realizing that their blindness had been visible all along. Their hubris prevented them from seeing your calm power. You didn't have to expose them. Their anxieties did it for you. They were not superior. They just believed they were, because they couldn't look beyond their own egos. Vindication is not sweet. It is bittersweet. There is a curious feeling of pleasure in being proved correct, but it is not as delicious as one would imagine. Watching them eventually recognize your insight honors your efforts, but it is tempered by the realization of what might have been averted. Their blunders were not inevitable. They were the outcome of ignorance, stubbornness, and arrogance. You warned them. You attempted to help them make better decisions, but they couldn't or wouldn't listen. Now, as they scurry to make apologies and deal with the repercussions, you have the empty sense that things might have been so different if they had trusted you. The remorse they feel now is a weight you've previously borne, quietly lamenting possibilities long before they recognized the cost. Vindication does not feel like success. It feels like a resignation. Knowing the truth all along wasn't simply about being correct. It was a burden you carried while others refused to see. The fear of confronting the truth. The pushback you encountered was not about you, it was about what you represented. You were a mirror reflecting facts they were unprepared to confront. They rejected the implications of your knowledge, not the information itself. Accepting what you presented would entail destroying the falsehoods and illusions people depended on to feel safe. Their opposition was motivated by self-preservation rather than ignorance. Change is difficult, and they dreaded what your truth demanded: responsibility, progress, and a willingness to address their mistakes. You were not just questioning their beliefs, but also their whole worldview. They believed that by rejecting you, they were protecting themselves. In actuality, they were postponing the inevitable. The facts they avoided are now inescapable, and the reckoning they postponed has come. The price of truth. Truth is more than simply information. It is also a weight and a sacrifice. While they lived in blissful ignorance, you bore the emotional cost of awareness. Carrying the truth alienated you, as others derided or rejected you for being too cautious or too much. Standing strong in your principles was difficult. It brought loneliness, self-doubt, and frustration. You did not select this route carelessly. Knowing the truth was not a gift. It was a burden you carried in silence. They are caught off guard as they begin to feel the weight of the truth for themselves. They've never experienced the humiliation, solitude, or internal conflicts that come with bearing information that others don't or won't grasp. The emotional cost they're paying now is a small fraction of what you've already gone through. They are overwhelmed by the truth, but you have become stronger by bearing its weight. Once the truth is out, it cannot be ignored. The worst aspect about accepting the reality is that there is no turning back. Once the veil of ignorance is removed, the comfort of denial is gone for good. That is what people are fighting with right now, not simply the weight of the reality, but also the loss of the illusions that formerly protected them. You did not impose this change on them. Simply standing solid in your awareness made it hard for them to look away indefinitely. They can no longer ignore the defects, worries, and failures they worked so hard to avoid. The falsehoods they told themselves to escape responsibility, the reasons they used to ignore you, are now brutally clear. They realize how much time and effort they spent fighting against the inevitable, and it aches. They not only lament their ignorance, but also the loss of power they believed they had. The quiet strength of moving forward. Being ahead of others in knowledge does not seem like triumph. It feels more like quiet resilience. While they were blinded by ego and fear, you continued on, experiencing the loneliness and anguish of knowing what others couldn't yet comprehend. Now that they've caught up, they're dealing with the consequences of their blunders and lost chances. But you don't need their approval. Their recognition of your reality, although important, does not define you. Your strength is your ability to go ahead quietly and gradually. You never sought their favor or competed for recognition. You were merely following a route of clarity and purpose, which needed patience, resilience, and bravery. As they come to grips with their shortcomings and the reality they previously denied, you will be able to go forward without the need for their recognition, because, in the end, the truth was more than a burden. It was a source of power. It's what enabled you to persevere, progress, and remain ahead. So, while others deal with the repercussions of their decisions, you stand firm, not in victory, but in calm recognition of your path. You always knew the truth, and that is what is most important.